questions? Any questions?
No, the two of them missed, I see where I messed up.
Okay, well, that's good. Okay, we need to go ahead and go to the next part. So, okay, you can see me on some if you're having problems. Hey, okay, well, just a minute. Go ahead and work just a minute. If you want, check the ones that we've already done
Okay, gotcha.
first. door too, and then I couldn't get out. And the students couldn't either, and then Travis Harmon came and tried to open it up, and it wouldn't open, so they had to get somebody to come and actually take the doorknob off. It was a strange day.
You can't leave class today. You gotta work all day.
Right.
I missed 7. The adding the mixed numbers are one that really screwed me up.
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
That's right. 12, 17, 15. Okay. No. What's wrong with that one? 17, 15.
It's
Yeah, too big.
yeah.
So that's just what it is after you reduce that part.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't get that far yet.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. So, like if you did that in a problem and you showed me your work, that would just be 1 point off. you
Okay,
know,
that's beautiful.
like
I
that.
like that.
Okay.
I got this.
Okay. All right, okay. Next, back to notes, and we're going to start on multiplication and division of fractions. Okay, now, since you didn't get finished, you know, next week when we get here, be full of questions if you have having problems. Okay, now if we're going to multiply like 1/2 times 2/3, all you have to do is multiply your numerators and multiply your denominators. Okay, so it's 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 3 is 6, and then reduce it. 2 we're going to 2 one time, 2 we're going to 6 3 times. And there's your answer. Okay, and that works on any multiplication problem that's just a single number like that. Now, there's one thing that you can do that will make your problem simpler. You remember canceling? Okay, if this number is the same as that number, you can cancel it out. 2 going to 2 one time, 2 going to 2 one time. So 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 3 is 3. You get the same thing, but it makes it a, shorter problem. Here's another one. 1/3 times 15. If you remember, when you have a fraction times a whole number, you have to make a fraction out of the whole number by putting a 1 under it. Okay, and that way you can see your numerators and see your denominators. It doesn't change anything to it. So you can say 1 times 15 is 15. 1 times 3 is 3. Simplify it. You can't ever leave it with a numerator bigger than the denominator, so it's a 5. Now, if you wanted to cancel that, it makes it an easier problem by saying 3 1 3 1 times 3 1 15 5 times. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. So it just makes it a little bit simpler if you cancel, but you do not have to cancel. It's up to you. But your rule on multiplication is to multiply your numerators, multiply your denominators. If you see something to cancel, cancel it if you want to. Now here's one where you've got a mixed number times a fraction. Okay, mixed number times a fraction. Now, first thing you have to do is change this from a mixed number into an improper fraction. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8/3 times 2/5. Okay? So you can't leave it in mixed form. You have to make it improper. Check to see if anything will cancel. It will not in this one. So multiply your numerators, multiply your denominators, and then look and see if it's in lowest terms. It is not. So 15 will go into 16 one time with 1 left over. So 1 and 1 15. Like that. Questions? Okay. Now 3 and 2/5 times 1 and 1/6. Okay, both of these are mixed numbers. So change them both to improper and then just multiply. Nothing will cancel in that one. you get to this point, you have 119 over 30, so just divide 30 into 119 and go ahead and finish your problem. I'm not going to give you an answer on that one. Okay, now you will find out adding fractions, no problem. Multiplying, no problem. Subtracting, usually you have a problem. Okay, anything in math that involves subtraction, for some reason, there's just more places to make a mistake. Okay, any questions on that part? Okay, now the next thing we do is we have to know what a reciprocal is. Okay, the reciprocal of 3/5 is 5/3. You just flip it, turn it upside down. So in order to divide fractions, you have to use the reciprocal. Okay, if I have something like 2/3 divided by 1/4. 2/3 divided by 1/4. You turn the second one upside down and multiply. So every single division problem will become a multiplication problem. Okay? And you already know how to multiply, so it's no problem. This is the only number, the second one, that you turn upside down, though. Don't turn both of them upside down. Just the second one. Nothing will cancel, so 2 times 4 is 8, 3 times 1 is 3. Divide 3 into 8. So 2 and 2/3. Questions? Right, yeah, it's pretty easy. But of course, we have to get to the more complicated ones. Now, if you've got both of them that are mixed numbers, you change them into improper fractions and then go from there. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3/2 divided by 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2 is 8/3. Okay. Now, division, your rule, turn your second one upside down and multiply. Nothing will cancel, so your answer is 9/16. Okay, questions before we go any further? Okay, so your rule on dividing fractions, you turn your second number upside down. If they are mixed numbers, first turn them into improper fractions, then turn your second one upside down, and then multiply across or cancel if there's anything to cancel. Okay. Let's see. So, that basically covers the rest of 3D, and then this is 3E. Okay.
Can I ask a question real quick? If there is one mixed number and one division, or one fraction, with division, do you just change the one mixed number into a proper fraction and then flip the second number, I guess?
Right. You don't have to do this one, but like this. Okay. 3 times 2 is 6, 8/3 times
7 or 8 over 7.
8/7. Okay. And then go ahead and work that out.
Gotcha.
Okay. If it's the other way, suppose it's 2/3 divided by 1 1/2. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3/2. Then you turn it upside down and multiply. Okay, good question. Okay, so I'll give you those in just a minute. Okay. Now, the next thing that we have is percent. Percent means per hundredth. So we just have to remember that percent means everything's in hundredths, okay? Divided into 100 little pieces, okay? And you think of that, of course, with money, because you've got 100 cents. Now, the first thing we're going to do is to change decimals into percents. And then we're going to change percents back into decimals. So we're going to go back and forth. Okay, if we have something like this, if you read that as 0.20, it means nothing to your brain. That's the way most of us read it. But it is really 20 hundredths, tenths, hundredths, 20 hundredths. So that's what it looks like as a fraction. Then if percent means hundredths, okay, then that is 20%. It's the same thing as 20%. Now this is just explaining it, but the easy way to do it is to move your decimal 2 places to the right and put the percent symbol. Remember doing that? So this is 10 hundredths. So you move it 2 places to the right, or 10%. If you have 0.37 or 37 hundredths, that's 37%. Suppose you have 0.127 or 127 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. All right, still going to move it 2 places. So that makes it 12.7%. Okay, so it's just a matter of moving it 2 places because you're really like multiplying by 100, because percent means per hundredth.
What would that, so you said you had the 12.7%, what would that look like as a fraction?
Okay,
Or is that just like a
If-
different thing?
it would be 127 tenths, hundredths, thousandths,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
like that. Okay, now here's another one, 8.12, and you wanted to make that into a percent. You move it 2 places, so it's 812%. Now, to answer a question that you had, 812 over, let's see, 12 hundredths. Okay, like that. Okay, so it's, wait a minute. Yeah, okay.
Would you have to, would you have to divide that, I guess, or?
Yeah, it's like this part is 8 and 12 hundredths, so you can multiply 8 times 100 plus 12.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, you get 812 hundredths. But once you figure out what you're doing, then you realize, okay, I just moved it 2 places to the right. Okay. Now, another thing, sometimes people can't ever remember if they're going to move it to the right or to the left. Okay, one way to remember is take a number that you know the answer to. This is the same thing as 5 tenths, which is the same thing as a half or 50%. Okay, see, if you simplified 5 tenths, that's a half. Okay, so take one that you know, and then you can use that one to know whether you're going to the right or the left or whatever. Okay, but this is red, 5 tenths, which is like this. That's the same thing as a half or 50%, because you're moving it 2 places to the right, 50%. Okay.
So since there's not another number there after 5, it's 0.
Same thing as a 0. Now we're going to go backwards. We're going to change the percent back to a decimal. Okay. And this is where your notes come in handy, you know, is to keep them close by so you know which way to go. Okay, Now, this one we're going to start out with the percent, and we're going to go backwards and make it a decimal. Okay. 20%, the percent sign means like 2 places are per hundred. So I'm going to move it this way so I get 20 hundredths. Okay. So it's just going the other way. The way to think about that is this is 50%, which is 50 hundredths, which is like a half. You know, so we've already done that one way. So if you'll use 50%, and that's 0.5, you know, or 50 hundredths, which reduces to a half, then that will help you. And some of them you'll have to do the percent to the decimal to the fraction. Okay, if I wanted to do this to a fraction, that would be 20 hundredths, which is 2 tenths, which reduces to 1/5. Okay, and you may start off with a fraction and have to go back this way. Okay. Now, suppose you have something like 33.5%. 33.5%. That's 33.5%. Okay, go back to the left. So it's 0.335. Okay, if I had to make that a fraction, I would say tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So that would be 335 thousandths. And then you'd have to reduce it, you know. Okay, if I have, suppose I have 27.5%. Okay, now before I move that anywhere, I would change my fraction into a decimal. Okay, and 1/2 is the same thing as 5 tenths, right? Okay, so first thing you do, if you've got a fraction there, make it a decimal first, then move it 2 places to the left, so 0.275 or 275 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Now, if I had to make this into a fraction, I would say 275 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Then I would reduce that. Okay, you just don't ever know which way you're going to have to do these. You might start with a fraction, make it go to a decimal and then to a percent, or from a percent to a decimal to a fraction, and put it in lowest terms. Questions?
Yes. Like, what if it's not a half? Like, can you give another example? where it's
Okay.
not like-
That's my next
Oh, good.
example. Okay, I've got 33 1/3%. Okay. All right. We said first, put that as a decimal. Now what happens is 3 will go into 1. See what's happening? Okay, it's going to be repeating. So you can put a bar over what repeats. Okay, so change this to a decimal first. If it repeats, then put it like that. Now I'm still trying to get from my percent back to a decimal, so move it 2 places, so 0.333. Okay, which means all of that keeps repeating, so your decimal is actually 0.3 with a bar. Okay, let's look at another one. You don't have to write this one down if you don't want to. Let's say it's 23 3/4%. Okay, 23 3/4%. Okay, first change that into a decimal. 3/4 is 0.75. Okay, then move it 2 places to the left, so it's 0.2375. If I had to make a fraction out of it, that's 2,375 tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. Okay, and then you could reduce it. All right, so if it's just a regular whole number there, that's a percent, you just move it 2 places to the left. 2 places to the left. If you got fractions, you make them into decimals first. Now, there's some things that can help you out with fractions, decimals, and percents, and that is if you memorize certain ones so that you know 50% is a half, 33%, or 33 1/3 is a third, 25%, fourth, so forth, so on. And that's the next thing that we do, is change, okay, to a decimal, percent, or fraction. Alright, so I'm going to put fraction over here, decimal in the middle, and percent over here. And then I'm going to, let's see, let's see. Trying to figure out which one of these is the answer. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter where it is on here. We should be able to move it back and forth and come up with our answer. Okay. Here's another one I'm going to do down here. Okay. Let's say we've got 5 tenths. Okay. To make a fraction out of that, 5 tenths, right? But we want it in lowest terms, so that would be 1/2. Okay? To make a percent out of it, we would move it 2 places, because half is 50%. Okay, so remember, whenever you're trying to do these, change from a fraction to a decimal to a percent, or whichever way, if you memorize certain things, that helps you. Okay, and we said a while ago that 25 hundredths is what is a fraction? Okay, 1/4. Because that right there is 25 hundredths, which will reduce 25 going to 25 one time, 25 going to 100 4 times. Just think about money, and that helps you out. As a percent, this is 25%. Okay, so that's one you should know. This is one you should know. What about a fifth? As a decimal, divide 5 into 1. So that's like this, or 2 tenths. And then as a percent, 20%. Okay? So all of these you should pretty much have memorized by the time you're the age that you are. Okay, so 3/4 is what is a decimal? 0.75. Alright? And that is same thing as 75 hundredths. Okay, so to make it a percent, you move it 2 places, 75%. Okay, now this next one gets a little bit harder. But remember, back in the very last thing we were doing, it said if you have a fraction, you make it into a decimal first before you do anything. So 1/4 we know is 0.25. Right? Okay. Now we're taking this back, and we're going to make it back into a decimal. So you move it 2 places. So it's 0.0225. Now we've said several times, if you read it as 0.0225, that doesn't mean anything to your brain. But it's 225 watts. Good. 10 thousandths. Okay, now you got to go through the horrible process of, simplifying that. So you could start with a 5 or a 25 or whatever. Okay, I got 9/400 for that one. That's as much as I could simplify it, and I think that's right. Okay, now, so you will have a sheet where you've got to change things, back and forth. But just remember, if it's a percent and it's a fraction, change it to a decimal first. Then read it 225 tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. And then simplify that, and then I'll make it into the fraction. So you don't ever know exactly which way it's going to go. Now, the last thing we're going to do is some application problems. Or when in the world do we ever need to know any of this stuff? And sometimes you do. Some people use this every day. Some people never use it. And back when I was teaching like in 9th grade, Algebra 1 and stuff like that, when we're ever going to, you don't ever know, and I can't promise you that you will, and hope that most of you don't have to. But anyway, okay, so on the application problems, where we're going to apply what we have learned on some of this. Okay, now there are some words that mean to add, some that mean to subtract, some mean to multiply, and some mean to divide. Now, when I was back in the 5th or 6th grade, if some teacher had told me this, it would have simplified my life a whole lot. I was always petrified of reading problems. And I still don't like them unless I have the answer, and then I'm more comfortable. But in life, reading problems come at you every day. They're not presented in a nice little neat thing, but you might have to figure out how to solve something to save you some money. It's like there was one of my math teachers at, I got my master's at UNA, and he said that he ordered gravel for his driveway. And he went out and he figured out how wide it was and how long and, about how deep he was going to make. Well, he made a mistake somewhere. And when they delivered it and spread it out, it was this deep. And he never got rid of that gravel, and it cost him, 10 times whatever it should have cost. So there are things in life that it would help if you knew a little bit of math. Okay, now some words that mean to add is just the word add. Okay, it might mean total. What is the total number of such and such? You might have words like combine, or how much more is something than something else. Sometimes that means subtract too, so you have to kind of be careful. Okay, on subtraction, it might be less, or the difference, or how much is left after such and such. Now, in multiplication, a word might be product. Product means to multiply. Times. But one of the main words is of. Okay. 1/2 of something or other. That means to multiply. Okay. Divide, the main word that they use is per. Miles per gallon. Feet per second. That means to divide the first one by the second one. Okay. Another word is quotient that they use. Okay. Now, we're going to work some of these together before I give you a worksheet on it. But another thing you might need to know is how to figure out tax. And I'm sure all of you have done this. Let's suppose our tax rate is 8% in these problems. Now, I was kind of mean to my daughter. Being a math teacher, she would, always wanting clothes, and boots and all this kind of stuff. Shoes, she loves shoes. And I tell her, I said, okay, if you can figure out if it's, say, 20% off and the tax is 8.5%, and you can figure it out to the penny, I'll let you buy it. So this was before calculators, so she would have, But anyway, if you got to figure out tax on something, suppose you bought something for $17.85, and the tax rate is 8%, and you want to figure out how much you owe. So you change the percent into a decimal. That's the whole reason you had to know how to do that, is so you can work out problems, okay? Then you multiply. Okay, and then we learned that when you've got decimals, if this is 2 places and this is 2 places, you start from the right and you go over 4. Now you've got to figure out if that's $1.42 or $1.43. Okay, it's 5 or more, so they're going to round up. So it's $1.43. Okay, and you take this $1.43 and you add it back to the amount of your purchase. So altogether, you owe $19.28. And a lot of times, if you're working with, like you've got a child that brings their own money to buy something for them, they never figure out that they're going to have to pay tax. You know, you don't have enough. But that's all you have to do is figure it out. Now, suppose something was 20% off. Okay, you would take 20% of that. Okay, and get an answer, and then do your tax. You know. Okay, and I know you've done all that. Okay, now we're gonna work a few practice problems. I'm gonna go ahead and give you all of these things. Okay. I'm gonna let you take that home so you can check the ones that you got. Okay. What we're gonna do right now is work the practice problems together before you do any of these things. Practice problems. Now, I have no clue why that one is there. It's not supposed to be there. It's some kind of little mistake. Okay, so, okay, on the practice problems, these are very easy practice problems. Now the next page is a little bit harder. Okay, so we're doing like the ones on multiplying fractions, dividing fractions, and percents, and then we're doing the application problems. Okay, the first one, it says find the total of calories of the breakfast menu. So here are your items: apple juice, yogurt, and egg. So to find the total, that means to add. Okay. Alright, so I got 405 calories. And a lot of times on any kind of homework or anything, I like to circle the answers where they're easier for you to find and me to find also. Now, how many more calories are in the yogurt than the egg? What word in this kind of tells you what you're supposed to do? And how many more? Yogurt than the egg. So in this case, the more means to subtract. So 215 minus 80. Okay, so I got 135. Okay. The next one, Sandra has a car that costs 72 cents per mile to drive. How much will it cost her to drive 1,200 miles? Now be careful in this one, because it has the word per in it, okay? But it's 72 cents per mile. Okay, that's like if you're doing miles per gallon. But how much will it cost her to drive 1,200 miles? It's 72 cents for each mile. So what should we do?
Multiply.
Multiply. Okay, so you've got 1,200 times 0.72. Remember, before you can multiply, if this says 72 cents, you need to change it into actual cents, like that. Okay. And then multiply that out. Did you get $864? Okay, good. Okay, now the next one, it says Miss Ramos earns $24,180 a year. How much does she earn per month?
So it'd be like 12 divided by, or 200, or 24,130 divided by 12.
Right. And if you need more room, do another sheet of paper on the back. Okay, how much does she earn per month?
$2,011 or $2,010.
Okay,
Yeah.
15.
15.
2015. I don't know. I could have missed it. Mhm.
Oh, that's an 8, not a 3.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense now. I
Okay.
can't read.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, yes, that was an 8. Okay. All right, and in this one, she earned this much for the whole year. How much does she earn per month? So you divide it. So you have to be careful, even though these words, and that's what's bad about real life. Okay. Sarah bought a CD for $12.98 and a flash drive for $15.42. The sales tax is 9%. What is her total cost? Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to work on that one.
I have no clue.
Okay, add them together. So she bought this and she bought this. So altogether it was $28.40. Then the tax was 9%. Change it to a decimal before you multiply. That comes out to 25560. There were 2 points here, 2 here, so altogether 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's $2.56 because they're going to round it up on money. Then you add that to the total of the CD and the whatever. Okay, so $30.96.
Is that fair taxes in Alabama?
I don't even know what it is now. Okay. I don't even know. Oh, man. Okay, the last one. Okay, now this is something, like I said, if you're cooking and you half, 2/3, the recipe calls for 2/3 of a cup of milk. How much? And she wants to half a recipe. Okay, 2/3 of a cup of milk. And you want to half it. What would you do? Half of 2/3. Okay. This is why some people's recipes don't turn out.
I need to talk to my mom about this stuff.
That's why I cook with a microwave.
Right. Mm. Okay, so you got a third. Okay, good. All right, now start back where you were a while ago and finish what you're doing, and then you start on, you know, what is it, 3, whatever. You know where you are.
I was just thinking, during the break,
Mhm.
I guess it was back in April. I play guitar, and I sold one of my guitars
Ah,
to I think
okay.
your daughter.
Yes,
Yes.
uh-huh.
It was a little Martin.
Johnson.
Oh yes, it was a Martin. I sold it
Yes.
the guitar through Facebook, I believe it was,
Uh-huh.
and met her over in Walmart. I was just remembering that.
Yeah, that is so funny, because I wondered who that was
Yeah.
that sold it to. Yeah, he's a big guitar nut.